There we go. So my name is Chad Jardine, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called CMO Zen. CMO Zen is a boutique outsourced CMO firm, and we focus on companies that are early stage. So companies that are in that 1 to 50 million of ARR. That's where I spend my time. And before doing that, I was a marketer for several, mostly tech companies here locally for like 20 years. Like, I feel like I should say that softly because it's like, but you'll see from my slides, like, I'm of that vintage, right? And I get to lead off with a conversation around content strategy. So let's talk about this. Why even do content? Why do we reach into the marketing toolbox and pull content out as one of the tools that we have to reach our customers? And part of that reason is because as marketers, we are matchmakers. There are people out there who have a need or a problem. There are products out there that solve that need or problem, and our job, our privilege, is we get to introduce those to each other and help them fall in love. That's the marketing job. Now, before we can do that, though, we really need to understand who that other person is. And so I'm going to share with you across the event today. These slides will be available to you after. There will be a bunch of links and resources that are in them, and you'll be able to grab the slides and download those resources. And here's a bunch that I'm going to share with you right up front. So before we can effectively do our matchmaking job, we really need to understand what that need is and what that ICP looks like. And so these are key questions. Who is that person? What is it that we're doing for them? How is that different than their other options? Why do they need this, right? What's their pain? Where are they going to hear about us? And most importantly, are we sure that our assumptions are actually right? So at CMO Zen, we use a tool called Process Street to catalog our playbooks for different work that we do for founders. And so here are 5 playbooks that we use to solve these questions, and these links will be in the slides for you as attendees after we're done. Free to use, free to copy, free to turn into your own business. Great, they're yours. Now, as we think about this ICP, right, the ideal customer profile, let me ask you guys, how many of you are founders, CEOs, or solopreneurs? Great. How many of you are professional marketers? There's probably some overlap. You guys are our ICP, right? We put content out. You showed up at this thing because we were talking about something that you cared about. And I'm not doing that to say, hey, look, wasn't this great that we manipulated you to come and show up at this? But this is what we're doing right here, right now, is what we're talking about. This is content working. And our job, right, if you want to come to the next one, it's our job to make sure that you take away value from this exchange. And so this is kind of us in the beginning, right? We're not sure. We know the ICP, but we don't know for sure. We're like putting our message out there. It's like, please love me and do it just because I like Peter Gabriel. So, and sometimes we forget that this relationship is built in stages. And so let's walk through those real quick. In the beginning, like I said, we know the ICP, but we know them as a crowd. We don't know them individually, and to make this a two-way relationship. But at the beginning, it's not. At the beginning, it's one way from us with our content, one way from them consuming our content, and it's not until those things work that we actually start forming a relationship where we know each other. And the funnel is kind of how we map that. Conversation about dark marketing, the dark funnel, dark social, and we used to just call that the pre-funnel. This was the area where we were naive to who was in there. But dark funnel is way cooler, right? Like, this is so much better. And it turns out that the dark part is actually really big. There's a lot of stuff that happens in that demand creation part of the funnel. And then once somebody decides that they want to engage, they actually drop through the other stages of the funnel pretty quick. So if our job is to create demand out there, how do we do it? How do we make our customer feel like, I need, come on, doctor, you're really in bad shape, help me out. The demand comes through the messaging. If we know the ICP and we're actually speaking to their problems and their needs, and that messaging is delivered through content. So that's why content is the tool we pull out of the toolbox to attack the demand creation side. And ultimately our success, the volume of our success is this equation. It's going to be how much demand we can generate minus how much friction and concern is left after somebody consumes our content. That equals the volume of our success. Okay. Finished with why, let's talk a little bit about how for a minute. Thank you. This is your... This is kind of so great. So much of our content we just throw into outer space, right? We just send it out there. Nobody listens. Nobody cares. And we're going to try to talk about what the difference is with that. Part of it is no strategy. So I like to break strategy down into two components. One is content creation. Who are we talking to? What do we want to tell them? Why? And the other one is the structure of that. How do we put those pieces in place so that they reinforce each other to cause the desired action? And if we do that right, then we'll deliver the right message to the right person at the right time. And that's where we get reactions. And it feels like we should just create content and then figure out what to do with it, but that's actually backwards. We really need the structure first and then create content to fill the spots in the structure. Jake is going to talk more about types of structures, but the principle underneath that is that we meet people where they are. We don't just expect them to show up. It's not if you build it, they will come. It's we need to meet them where they are, and then we start dropping breadcrumbs to lead them to where we are and where we want them to go. Another thing, I see people struggle with this, right? It's a big commitment. I'm going to produce content every day, every week, every month. I'm going to do my podcast. Even if I do seasons twice a year, it's still a big commitment. And so my advice about that is find where you can be consistent. How much can you bite off and be consistent with? Be consistent first and then be more. Leverage templates. So templates aren't just, I don't just mean go out and find a bunch of templates. What I mean is create your own template and use it to instantiate everything that you learn so that all these decisions get boiled down into a template. So this is one of mine. This is a blog post template that I created. It has a whole bunch of things that I try to do every time I write a blog. And so do you see there where it says short first sentences? Short first sentences. I have that in there because I was reading about momentum as a marketing technique, marketing psychology technique. It's I have a short sentence, I have it next to my picture, and do it every time because it's easy to read. They consume it really fast, and by the time they hit the second line, they have that little inch of momentum. And so that's baked into my template. And you can download my template and make it better. Send me the improved version. Promote or perish. So a lot of times we generate content and we're 90% content generation, 10% sending our message out. Probably a good rule of thumb is more 50-50. Generate our content, but spend at least as much time promoting your content as you spent creating it, because otherwise it's in outer space. There's no air out there. Nobody can see it. Nobody can tell. A calendar is a great tool to use to keep track of your promotion and distribution schedule. This one's by Ali Schwenke. She's great. This template didn't fit my process, though. That's an important thing. Tools can't give you strategy. You need strategy first, and then the tools can plug in and help you with your strategy. So I created a calendar that fit what my strategy was. I knew my frequency, I knew what channels I was using, and I needed a calendar that would adapt to that. And so this also you can steal and use to your heart's content, but this is what mine looks like. And I'm in this every day. When it comes to your message, be clear and then be clever. If you aren't clear first, nobody will care that you were clever. And the reason I use the Lord of the Rings here is that this is great, right? In the first couple chapters, we understand that this is the One Ring. This is really important. The rest of the entire volumes is about all the characters' intents about that one clear thing. And so this is what your objective is. Clear means somebody reads it, I understand it, I get it. Clever means, oh, and also I want it. This is a CEO that I used to work for gave me this as an example. This as an ad headline. This is clear. This should be the minimum standard, right? I understand from this that I'm not selling pony rides. I'm not running a petting zoo. I have a horse and I don't want it anymore. I want you to have it and I'm looking for somebody to buy it. I understand all of those things from these 3 words, but it's not super interesting yet. So on top of, once you establish clear, then think about the story. And the story oftentimes means I'm going to create an expectation and then I'm going to give it a twist. I'm going to subvert the expectation. So here, we like our clients because of their money. It's oh, that's a little more honest than I was expecting. And they like us because of our honesty. And okay, the bells go off. I get it. Or these, right? George Tannenbaum, amazing. You should all follow him. Amazing headlines. Every one of these has an expectation and a twist. Here's one that we did. So one of our clients creates software for education companies that are or it's really for students to chart their path to graduation. And what they found is only about half of students who start college end up graduating. What they found was that if there was a college in Dallas that ran their software through it, they had 2,000 students who had qualified for degrees. Nobody knew. Students didn't know, university didn't know. And so this was the headline that we created for them, trying to be clear and then give it a twist. Okay, last thing is if you have a content program that has stalled out, like you started it at some point and you're like, go, 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 and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, too much work or something happened, right? The economy, whatever. Now you have this big pile of content. Mine that for whatever it's worth. Their old content, once you have a new structure, the half-life of content is short. New structure, people will come, they won't be, wait, that's what you published 18 months ago. Nobody cares. Grab it and reuse it in the new structure and it will go to work for you. And think about, is the content ephemeral or evergreen? So evergreen's better to reuse, right? If it's something like you got a big piece of content about the 2016 election, it's probably past its sell-by date. Okay, this slide will be in there. It has links to everything that I've shared with you, and you can download it, as well as kind of an outline. And then if you'd like to get a hold of me, I'm at chad@cmozen.com. And if you want to talk to me, my calendar is just chadscalendar.com. Now things actually start getting exciting. Right? But I'm going to pass the torch to Crystal Lee from Comma Copywriters.
Good job, Chad. Good job. Okay, just make sure. Can you hear me, Jordan? Just want to make sure, and I'm under the green light. There we go. Thank you all for being here, and thank you. Chad really spearheaded this, so thank you, Chad, for inviting me to be part of this. So like he said, my name is Crystal Lee. My team is Comma Copywriters, and we are really passionate about no fluff content creation. So at Comma, we write content worth reading. We've been doing this for 7 years now. We're about to celebrate our 7th year in business. And we write a whole lot of blog posts and case studies, white papers, thought leadership articles. That's our bread and butter. It's all we do. And so what I'm about to share is very specific to the writing process. So Chad has covered leading up to what do you actually want to create, which is so important. And I'll share, he's really shared the why behind your content. So I'm going to share this little sliver before you execute on great content. So at Comma, high quality is really important to us. So everything that we write goes through 2 sets of eyes before we send it to our clients. The first draft is on time or it's on the house. We had a 99.94% on time rate last year. So we're not perfect, but we're pretty close. And we always include a round of revisions with everything that we write. These are some of the brands that we've written for and gotten to learn from. And so everything I'm about to share has come from a whole bunch of seeing different ways that companies do content. Here's my team, a little peek of us making a human comma, and I think what I'm really most proud of is that we were named one of the 100 companies championing women last year by the governor's office here in Utah. So we're growing and making spaces for baby-friendly and life-first work. I'm really passionate about that. Okay, so now back to you, and the way that I thought about this, seeing your hands raised is really helpful because there's a real range in here where we have some solopreneurs, we have some of you that are on large content teams, and so there's a real range here, but everything I'm about to share, I hope at least, is applicable for all of you. So this, again, is thinking about the space between having a strategy and executing on your content so that you're setting yourself up for repeated success, because if you don't have these specific things in place, no matter who you are, no matter what your company is, you're most likely not gonna climb your next peak of content creation if you don't have these things in place. So here we go. So why? Like Simon Sinek says, we always want to start with why, which is why we started with strategy with Chad. So thank you for that. So now we're using the content machine analogy. We're clicking into the next gear into content creation. So I'm going to be getting into I'm going out of order of the typical who, what, where, but we're going to do what, who, when, and how. This is the order that we operate at Comma and the way that makes the most sense in my brain for the pre-writing process. So with that, let's talk about what. So by the time you get to this space between strategy and writing, you know who you're writing for. You're very clear on what they're looking for, what their pain points are. You know your audience. You also, at this point, should know what your voice is, and generally that's guided by your style guide. And even if you're a one-person solopreneur, you still need to have some kind of guide to help you know so that you are consistent with your voice. Also, you need to be clear on what your cadence is. Are you publishing twice a week, once a month, 8 times a week? You need to be really clear on that so that you can consider yourself a publishing house and be consistent. And then also the volume, which those really go hand in hand, but knowing how much content that you want to create, and then types of content. And that's where I'm going to go a little bit more detail here. So here are a whole bunch of different types of written content. There's also video. My friend Austin here has a video company. There he is, and Falter Media does amazing video. So I'm focusing on written content, but here are so many different types of content. I think we've done every single one of these at Comma in the past 7 years. So I have a question for you. What is the best kind of content for your company to create? And I want someone brave to raise their hand. Who knows the answer to this? Or I'll pick on somebody. Okay. Oh, Brian, go ahead.
The kind my audience reads.
Aha! The kind his audience reads. Okay, you must have peaked, because that's exactly what I'd have to say about it too. So the content that performs best with your audience, and this will vary depending on what you talk about and who your audience is. There's going to be some variety. So I want to make sure this applies to everyone, but really that is the best answer, is what performs with your audience. So as an example from Comma, where we have a very consistent blog, we post every Tuesday, and we've been doing that for years. So here are a whole bunch of different types of blog posts. And again, you'll be getting this deck, so you'll have this. But just as an idea sparker to get you going. So we, in 4 years of running our blog, we've had more than 300 published blog posts, and these are the top 5 most viewed for us, and where we're focused on 2 audiences on our company website, and we're very clear about that it's content marketers and writers. So it's potential new clients and potential writers for our team. Those are our top 5. So marketers like to find awards, and this particular top most viewed piece, the average views on it is more than 6 minutes. So someone finds it and they spend their time and they really read through it, and they're gaining, I'm assuming here, but they're gaining value from it, something that they want to know. And then we've also found a lot of success with comparison articles, white paper or thought leadership article. And so after experimenting here, we rinse and repeat. So now we're doing a lot more of these comparison pieces, and we're finding higher rankings in our views because we know what our audience wants. And then, of course, how to get hired for the writers. That one does really well too. And conferences. So basically, marketers like lists, marketers like actionable, helpful tools that let them know what awards they can apply for, what conferences they can go to, and who they can hire and work with. So that's just a peek at ours. So, okay, who? So no matter who you are, again, solopreneur to enterprise level marketer, this is going to apply. There are different hats that you wear before you write, and you can have this literally be a different person, or it can all be the same person, but it's important to be aware that every one of these roles needs to be filled. So for the primary roles, I would say that in any piece of content that all 4 of these roles need to happen. There needs to be some kind of content director, someone who's making the ultimate decision on what content needs to be created. In our case, that's our client. So we look to them to provide what they want written, but for you, you can decide what that looks like. And then a writer, and now there are all kinds of tools. So this could be a human or it could be a tool, but writing and editing, I would assert that you need human eyes before you publish anything. And example with Google's Bard having a factual error a couple months ago in their very first public presentation. I mean, even with the AI tools that are available, you need to have a human that's reviewing every piece of content before you put it out. And then you need a publisher of some kind. And it could be a tool, it could be a person, but someone who actually publishes that content. And then secondary, if you are having subject matter experts, or you're co-marketing with another partner, co-creating something, or have a graphic designer, those I would say are secondary roles, but all of these roles need to have a place. So, and We will be doing a panel discussion, so you're welcome to dive in more. I'm going to go kind of quickly just so we can pass it off to the next guy. But so content director, again, this might all be you. You might be wearing all of these hats, but this ultimately is you deciding what topics you want to focus on. And in our case, like where our clients provide us with the content, well, we work together on the content brief. Ultimately, the content director owns the results too. So I'm not going to go into each of these, but just so you know, these are primary roles that always need to happen for any piece of high quality content. And then secondary, if you want to include a subject matter expert, that would be a human, not a tool. So, and they would offer exclusive insights. That's something that makes that piece of content really special, and often they participate in an interview of some kind. There could be a co-marketing partner, and this list can honestly go on and on, but these I would say are kind of the main secondary content roles. Okay, so I'm gonna go real quick. Okay, so you definitely need to be clear on agreed upon timelines and publishing dates. So generally I like to start with the publishing date first and work backwards from there and build in time for review, for editing, for writing, so that really the goal is to get it published on time. And there are lots of ways you can do this with a spreadsheet, with Asana. So we use Basecamp at Comma, and you can just see like we have edit. For us, there are three things we do. So, and in this case, they were just editing, but usually it's write, edit, deliver. So this is how it looks for us. And so what is possible when you're clear on the what, the who, and the when for content? High volume and high quality content worth reading. This was us celebrating writing more than 1 million words last year of high quality content, and this is my team. So when you have those processes in place, you really can have a machine that's happening that you're having great. So I want to just share really briefly. So again, we publish every Tuesday at Comma. We started our content creation last fall for this year, and by December 22nd, and that was very clear on this with my team what I wanted, before we went on our winter break, I wanted as much as we could of the year. We had 48 blog posts, so 92% of our blog content was written, edited, and scheduled. We do have a little bit, so most of ours are evergreen, so they can be used at any, and you can think ahead, like conferences and things like that. We do have some topical, so for example, we'll do like a recap of our birthday party. So those are timely, so we save those for those times. But and because of that, like we've been very consistent, we're seeing year over year increases in our visits, in our unique visitors, our page views. I'm being honest over here as a marketer, we do have a little increase in our bounce rate, but we also have more volume of visitors. So, okay, so the how, and I'm gonna be super quick to make sure I'm in my time. So before the writing begins, even if it's just you as one person, you wanna have some kind of content brief. And I would say the 3 main things that you need to get your brain going and make sure that you're staying on track is to have a working title, 3 main points that you want to cover, and also your call to action, so that you're very clear on what it is that the next best step is for your audience. And to go beyond that, you could include, if you're working with someone else who's writing, preferred sources, if there's any competitors to avoid, an outline, SEO keywords, H1s, H2s, H3s, summary statement. So this is an example. We work with Motivosity, and theirs, as you can see, it's pretty simple. We've got their audience, their tone, their voice, content use, their SEO strategy, and their sources. And we wrote this HR survival guide for this year. And you can see behind the scenes, this is our content calendar with them, where we have this working relationship that they can see what's coming, we can see what's coming, and I love that they include their summary like they do. So they're really great to work with. And then the published result looks like this. Same thing, here's Beehive Meals. I love Beehive Meals, big fan. They're a client, but they're also friends, and I'm a customer of theirs. So here are some of their prompts for us, topics that they gave us, and what that looks like in the actual document. So they gave us the topic of replacing the traditional mom. We always offer title options, so it ended up landing at supporting the modern family, and here it is published on their blog post. So once you have your why, and then you have all these process pieces in place, then you can really start cranking that content machine. And so you're all invited. Comma, we're celebrating our 7th birthday. Last year it was churros. This year we're doing charcuterie and content chats. It's coming up a month from yesterday, so a month away. I'd love to have you there. So, and again, my name is Krista Lee. You're welcome to reach out to me. Thank you for being here. And I want to turn it over to Jacob.
Thanks, Krista Lee. How's my volume? Okay. So Chad and Krista Lee presented some awesome high-level and tactical information there on content strategy and creation. So where I come in is I use content to drive website traffic. So my company is CustomerFaucet. My name is Jacob Andra, and we do content-first SEO, which means that we're using content specifically to drive revenue. And we do that through something called topical authority building. I differentiate it a little bit from regular SEO because that's got a bad rap. You get these people who want to find 500 things to fix on your site, and none of them are going to make much difference to your bottom line, or they want to build a bunch of spammy links. So we're building website content to make your brand an authority. That means that Google recognizes your brand as an authority in your space, and it rewards you with traffic. So here's an interesting little case study we did. You can see to the right of that first red line, we start working with them. They have pretty much zero website content, zero traffic, and we start building this content, much like Krista Lee has been sharing, doing a very similar process to what she's sharing. Getting the traffic building, getting the authority going, and then they decide to take a pause. So that's kind of in between the two red lines there. And during that pause, they decide to work with what I presume is a cheaper agency. We learn later that they're doing a bunch of stuff that I'm going to teach you not to do. And so it kind of, starts just going sideways or maybe even a little bit down. Then they come back to us, we pick up again, and it takes off. So to me, that was like a really good demonstration that when you do content right, it works. The problem is most website content never gets read, or it gets maybe, very, very few readers. So it doesn't really do much in terms of return on investment. So we developed we didn't develop this, but the structure we follow, we start with research. So keywords, what's awesome about keyword research, now a lot of people get way too focused on keywords, but what's awesome about keyword research is it's basically an insight into the mind of the customer, because all the data is there, readily available, everything your potential clients want to know. So you just mine that information and you create this entire landscape of everything they care about. And then instead of just creating content based on keywords, you then group those keywords. That's the next phase, clustering. We call it topical clustering. So you group those into this logical hierarchy. And so basically you have like top level topics, subtopics, and it all ties together. And so works really, really well. Then the content creation piece. Krista Lee talked about this. Brian Dean popularized an idea known as the skyscraper technique, where it just means you're writing about this topic, you make it better than any other content out there on that topic. So that's a key part, because each piece of content has to be like really good on its own. Internal linking helps reinforce the topical cluster. So you have to have a strong internal linking strategy that ties all your content together to create this library of knowledge, and that results in brand authority in your domain. Private Auto, great Utah company here, a client of mine. Caleb's back here somewhere. Caleb Whittle, he's their marketing guy, I work with him. But does anybody know what these little quotation mark thingies are at the front of those URLs? This is a screenshot from Ahrefs analytics tool, but those represent that these URLs are chosen by Google to show as featured snippets. And what that means is you're in position 1 of the search results, but not only are you in position 1, it breaks out a little paragraph and shows this paragraph. Essentially, it's a mark of confidence that Google really respects your brand as an authority. If it's showing you as featured snippets have a lot higher click-through rate than just, even than just being in position 1 without a featured snippet. So it's good to have. It also is a marker that you're doing something right. So you need breadth and depth. So the depth part is what I talked about with the skyscraper technique. The breadth part is, it's not enough to just have a few great pieces of content on your site. You need to cover your topic, you need to saturate your topic, and it all interlinks to create this library of knowledge. That's actually the way Google makes sense of information on the internet. It thinks in terms of topical clusters, even across the entire internet as a whole, and that's the way it's kind of reading your site. So its language processing abilities, this really speaks to the way they already make sense of things, and you're following that same structure. So again, it's called topical clustering, topics linked to other topics. This works whether you're starting from scratch with a brand new site that has no content, or a content-heavy site where you go in, and Chad alluded to this with his boneyard idea, where maybe you have a lot of content that never performed well, and you can go in and revitalize it by bringing these concepts in and implementing them. I have yet to see a really content-heavy site that doesn't have significant room for improvement, just because these techniques, when you implement them really well, there's almost always areas you can find to improve, whether it's better internal links, rewriting pieces of content to bring more information gain, or what have you. So some of the most common mistakes I see that are pretty easy to avoid is what I call the brain dump. Chad alluded to this, cannibalization, where you're not properly segmenting out your topics and then not having a good internal linking strategy. So Chad touched on this, where brands think that they'll start producing content from their own sort of ideas without a structure. This is where topical clustering is so important, because if you don't do your research and know what your customers want to know, and then like write specific pieces of content to address those different topics, you're kind of just throwing content out there from your own ideas. You know, like brands make this mistake a lot, where it's like, oh, I think that this is important to say, rather than reverse engineering it from what the customer wants to hear. Cannibalization, so again, back to private auto. When I came on board, we analyzed a lot of their pre-existing content. We noticed these two blog posts. This is just one example. There were many like this, and across many clients. But you look at these, you know, you can get a sense of what both articles are about from the URL. You can see there's some differences. You know, one's about receiving payments, one's about transferring money. So it's kind of like, does Google see these as the same topic or not? There's a whole science behind analyzing that. But after watching these for a while and seeing how they performed, we could tell that Google saw them as covering the exact same topic. So we unpublished the one in red, did a 301 redirect to the one in green, and saw that, you know, immediately take off a lot more. Google hates cannibalization. It loves a clean topical structure where everything is in its lane. So that works really well. You don't want to cross the wires and have write about the same topic across multiple URLs. And then with internal linking, strong anchor text that tells, essentially the anchor text needs to tell what the target is about. So on the left, you see an example where the term smart investment doesn't really signal a lot about what that URL is about, car valuations. Whereas on the right, we see that paperwork involved in a car transaction really is what the article is about. So that's sending a very strong signal. So those are the types of links that work well for your internal linking strategy. And the kind of the final point to make is that you are writing for two audiences if your goal is topical authority building, driving revenue through website content. You have to write to the algorithms, but if you're only writing to the algorithms, you're going to have bad content. If you're only writing for humans and you don't take into account the algorithms, you might have great content, but no one will read it. So you have to really balance both of those elements and write to both audiences. So here's my contact info if anyone is interested in talking more about this sort of thing. And I think next we're going to have a panel. So that's all I have.
Let's see.
Pull these out a little.
We're about the edge of the screen. Look at that. It's lined up perfect. And let's we can use this if we need to. me check my mic here. All right, so now it's up to you guys. What questions do you have? What things, what answers could we provide from any of the three of us? Yeah.
This question is for Crystal. My position, I am the sole writer, editor, and all that. Where do you recommend to me finding, other professional editors to review your work if you're the one-man writer?
Well, I have to say we have great editors at Comma, but I mean, really, if there is someone that you've worked with in the past that you had a great editing experience with, you could reach out to them. I'm not the biggest fan of Fiverr, but there are some talented people on there too. So there are freelancing sites, and then there are a lot of independent editors too. So yeah, there's quite a few options out there, and it's something to experiment with. That it might take a couple tries before you find someone that's a really great fit for you. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
This question's for Jacob. When you talk about researching the content that your audience wants to read, what's kind of your process of trying to figure that out?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's a lot more than I obviously can cover in a few minutes, but I'll try to give a high level. So you want to do keyword research.
Just like this, right?
Lisa, will you take a picture, please?
So you want to do some thorough keyword research. Try to pull this big body of keywords that represents everything they're interested in, everything related to your domain, and you get traffic volume, you get search volume for those keywords. You can kind of see what the highest interest topics are: long tail, short tail, top of funnel, bottom funnel, just like Chad covered with the funnel. Then you really group those into topics, and that is part art and part science. There's a certain amount of intuition to that, but also a lot of it's just very logical. So creating topics and then figuring out the logical topical hierarchy. So what is the higher level topic, and then what are the subtopics of that? Kind of just piecing all that together, and then just kind of figuring out which types of content pieces. And Crystal Lee did a great job of touching on a lot of the different types of content pieces. So once you have that topical map kind of made, you sort of plug in okay, this would be a great white paper, or this would be a great pillar page, this would be a great blog post. And you sort of start filling all that in, and then of course you execute on creating the content. So that's really high level. Obviously, hope that helped.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like AI is kind of the big topic over the last 4 months.
Yeah.
So we'd love to get your thoughts on using AI in content, and then how you think the search page is going to change, and ranking will change. Rankings will change because of the use of AI.
Yeah.
Do you want to tackle the SERP?
Yeah. And ChatGPT, for example, is a great content tool, but it's not a writer. It's so stupid. It'll make the stupidest mistakes, and if you try to rely on that to just create an article, it would create a terrible one. But you can use it very nicely in parts of content creation. But to what I see with the SERPs and all that, and of course when it came out, I was wondering how is this going to disrupt. But what it looks like to me is they're not actually going to create a replacement to search engines. They are just going to help contextualize search results that are already there. So think of them as a bolt-on to Google search, for example, that helps. Basically, they're just going to take the top results that are already there and try to help you make sense of them and contextualize them for you, and interpret them for you. So there's still going to have to be a mechanism to get to the top of those search results if you're even going to be relevant at all. So I don't see chatbots like ChatGPT disrupting search all that much. Now, eventually they may completely reinvent search, and that's a different thing. I see that pretty far down the road. For now, I don't think search as we know it is going anywhere. Did you want to?
I'd like to add too.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just say in terms of content writing, I've had my eye on this. I've been honestly kind of obsessed with it since the beginning of the year when it came out. And so the way that we're approaching it at Comma, so we're doing an internal pilot. We're experimenting with different types of AI tools, but something to be really aware of is that what you get as an output is dependent on the input. So basically, whatever you put in, you don't have control over what the algorithms are or how that tool works, but you basically just see the output that comes out. So your inputs are really important, and it's something, the reason why I haven't just jumped right in, we are integrating it into Comma, but I'm really trying to be thoughtful and strategic and measured in how we do it, because there are implications like for copyright infringement or like liability. And so so one just actionable tip that I would recommend that we're doing ourselves in our pilot is that any input that you put in, so for example, if you like created like a blog post and you want to have it help you come up with like an infographic or a summary, that's a great use. So when you're putting in your own original content as the prompt, then you're not going to come across like copyright or plagiarism or anything, because it's your own content. So I lean towards that direction, is having it amplify and augment the content that we write ourselves. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah. So we're getting a 3 on this question, but this is what's current. People are thinking about this right now. I think for me, it's really helpful to keep in my mind that there are things that computers are great at, and there are things that human beings are great at. What's kind of interesting about AI is that it's kind of, the computer's encroaching on some things that traditionally we're like, yeah, that is definitely a humans are better at that type of thing. But just so I think it'll be interesting to watch and see what happens. I think there are lots of tales of the flaws of ChatGPT now. I had an example where I was like, hey, I'm going to ask it to teach me how to use Midjourney, because it was just AI up to my gills. And I do two AIs. And it gave me an instruction. So I was like, I read the instructions. I was like, I know that Midjourney is administered through Discord, right? So why isn't there anything about Discord in these instructions? So I asked, I was like, hey, isn't Midjourney administered through Discord? It's like, oh, yeah. You should log into Discord and do that. And I was like, and maybe I'm like pushing it now, because now I'm suspicious. Why don't you tell me about Midjourney 5? Because I know ChatGPT is like only through 2021 or supposedly, and Midjourney 5 came out last month. And it gave me an instruction sheet about everything that was different about Midjourney 5. I was like, these seem kind of generic. And I was like, you don't really know anything about Midjourney 5, do you? And then finally it admits to me, like it confesses. It's like, okay, yeah, actually, I don't really know. You should go look at the instructions. And I was like, so what's interesting to me about this is not that it didn't know, but that it tried to bluff me. Like you're actually hoodwinking me right here. And I was like, I felt really, and I felt like my eyes were open to what was happening. Like there's, like, an algorithm is just, an AI is not really artificial. It's just a bunch of human decisions stacked up. And so, but that gave me some insights to say, it's like, well, okay, part of this is that it's going to project confidence, even if it shouldn't project confidence. So now I have new questions to ask to try and figure it out next time. But, oh yeah.
So I feel like this would be valuable for you too. So a couple months ago, I went to a panel that was called "Are Robots Coming After My Job?" Which honestly, there's been a serious terror barrier for me as an owner of a content company. Like it's a lot to figure out, and it was so valuable for me to hear from some of like the world's most brilliant minds that are AI scientists. And one of them shared the example. I'm a farmer's granddaughter, so this really resonated for me about how like in the Industrial Revolution, that in a farming community, like half of the people would be farmers producing enough food for the whole community. And when the tractor came along, all of a sudden they only needed one farmer for the whole community. And so the way that I've shared with my team, I actually had that same researcher come and present to our team of writers at Comma, is that we're going to be the writers that are learning how to drive the tractor. Like we already know how to write. Words are our medium. So we have a kind of a leg up that way, but instead of using a hoe, like we're going to use the tractor. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, Austin.
Yeah, question kind of for Jacob. You brought up the 2 links and how Google wasn't happy that they were about the same thing. And my mind goes to, well, if I'm writing all these blogs, is it even going to help if I'm just writing about the same thing? Like, what's the difference between writing about the same topic and topic clusters? And how can I navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the best way I can try to address that is to say you have to think in terms of how a topic breaks down into all of its subtopics. And so let's say, I don't know, just throw out a topic.
Video creation, that's a good one.
Okay, video creation, yeah. So you would break down every little subtopic of video creation, every little angle you could possibly think of that anyone would be interested in. You'd use keyword research to help you. What are people searching about? And then you would have this full body of content, but you wouldn't write about any of it twice. So some little subtopic of video creation, you'd only write about that one time. And then you'd link to that from all your other content. You would not write about, once you write about that subtopic, you would never write about it again, unless it's to come back and refresh it and like, oh, let's refresh this. So it's going to be your one resource about that subtopic, and you're going to come back and maybe strengthen it if you want to rewrite it or refresh it, but that's going to be your one URL that lives on your site that is about that little niche subtopic of video creation. You'll never write about that on, you'll never have another URL about that same subtopic. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And then my blogs refer to that pillar page. Is that?
Well, that could be a blog post, that could be a pillar page. I mean, I think in terms of URLs, so Google doesn't care so much like what we call it, whether we call it a blog post, a pillar page. Just think of it as a resource on your site, a URL. It lives on a specific URL, and it's going to be the one URL on your site about that.
I felt like, to be clear about that, like with video production, like you could have editing and like pre-production and post-production, or hosting, and all those would be pretty clearly not overlap with each other a ton, That's, just for examples. Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, so first I just want to thank you guys for being here. This panel has been blowing my mind. So yeah, appreciate it. I was thinking about it as you were going through and kind of talking through it. It seems to me to have kind of everything from planning and doing the structuring to then actually creating the content and then going out and how do we leverage that, online using the different tools that we have.
I think he's discovered our evil plan.
The thing that I was interested in is that it seems like it's more geared towards like a kind of the text and the language, and then kind of using semantics and language as you're going out and leveraging on the web. But for me, that's also kind of more of a Web 2 approach, well, maybe even a Web 1, kind of the reading web. But as we're getting into, well into Web 2 with this idea that it's user-generated content and a lot of it is visual.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you then take visual, which I think is the missing person up there in your panel, like video, imagery, other stunning visuals, and like build that into especially what Jacob's doing. So that's really, I guess, kind of the context for my question for all of you. Where does visual fit in this?
That's a great question.
I can give this a sentence or two and then let you guys jump in.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the principles of content creation, like at the strategy level, most principles apply to video or audio, right? If you're doing podcasts, the channel doesn't matter. The platform for the content doesn't matter. You still need to think about content creation. Who's the audience for the message? You still need to think about promotion. Where is this going to show up, and how am I going to be in front of the ICP? So all of those things stay the same. You just have the dynamics of a new medium to consider. Like there is SEO for video and for images. There are topics of each of those that we could dig into, but overarching principles of content, I think, apply regardless of what way you're communicating from what way you're matchmaking, I should say. I think the same strategy applies.
I actually really love this question because right before we started, I told Austin of Falter Media, I said, Austin, I'm not talking about any videos today. I'm just focusing on writing. So really just due to this being like a 1 hour, we only have so much time. So we've just each focused on our zone of genius. But the way that I think about visuals, whether it's pictures or videos or infographics, anything visual, I think in terms of content packages. And anytime that you have a visual, there have to be some words that back it up so that that visual can be found. So like, for example, when we do our recap of our Comma birthday party after next month, we're going to have an awesome video, we're going to have pictures, and we're going to have descriptions for each of those pictures and the video, and have a full blog post so that it's a full package. And so I would say, even if you were to do like a vlog on your website, if you're wanting you want to get as much juice to your website as you can. So if you can pull, even if you have like a YouTube channel, like pull that onto your website so that your individual URLs are getting the views and the squeezing that like visitor juice, you know, like you want to try to integrate as much of that into your own IP as you can. I would recommend that you don't just put like a video, but you have some kind of description, even if it's just a brief summary. There needs to be some written content that backs it up. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I can add a little. Yeah, and great question. I agree with what Chad and Crystalie have both said. And when we talk about building brand authority in your niche, that actually stretches way beyond your website. So I was focusing on website because, you know, we have to draw the line somewhere with a presentation this quick. But your brand authority stretches way beyond your website to all your social channels, your YouTube channel, all your social media. If you have a, I don't know, Pinterest board, whatever, you know, so if you're creating infographics, sharing them across the web, Google knows all that. It ties all that to your brand. So that is all helping build your brand authority. You can integrate those into your website. So it all helps. And you know, it's all super helpful. There are a lot of strategies specifically for video and graphics, SEO, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's important.
So,
I have a question about gated content, and this could be for all three of you or any of you above. Just besides A/B testing, how do you decide whether to gate content or not on your website?
Don't do it.
Really? Why?
I would say unless it's like something extremely valuable, for the most part, you're better off giving it away. Gating it is usually, in many cases, cloaking it from the algorithms, so it can't be found. So it's not really contributing to your domain authority. Also, just the whole idea of gating is largely, I think, a bit dated and not done as much. You know, giving away your content, I think, is what people are finding better results with. Maybe you guys can speak to that a little.
Yeah. Well, and I would say in a world with ChatGPT, like we are about to be absolutely flooded with garbage content, like so much just like fluff and not helpful content. And so those who are going to win have very helpful, useful, actionable content that's easily accessible. And so I think there is, like you said, there are certain exceptions where there's a time and a place for gated content if you've commissioned to have this really fancy report or something. But for the most part, you want to make it as easy as possible to get to your content. And you're still going to have that return on investment eventually. I mean, it's going to come back to you eventually if you're providing value. But I agree that gating content is we're kind of moving past that season.
yeah, I think.
And then he'll be next.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The real question is like, okay, the reason I want to gate my content is because I want to capture this lead. I want to know who that person is earlier, right? And I want to start this relationship. I want to make this relationship two-way sooner. And so I think what's happening is that if we give people total control about when they start the relationship, then when they start it, the ultimate quality of that relationship is better. And so I think that's the underlying principle. Like I think it's okay to say, hey, if you want a thing and I'm not giving it to you unless you do this, and that's the way you want the relationship to go, that's okay. But you're setting the tone for the relationship. So where's the next one?
And he was in the back.
Oh, yes.
Oftentimes in companies, especially some of your larger companies, the people who have the most subject matter expertise have the least amount of time to create content. What is your process for not letting their lack of time slow your company down from a healthy cadence of content creation?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is you need to hire Comma Copywriters. Comma Copywriters. But
we have a whole blog post about this exact thing, like succeeding with subject matter expert interviews. So some best practices that we have is that there's someone, and it's generally our main point of contact at our client, who is the owner of setting up those interviews. So the biggest struggle is getting on their calendar. And so if you have one person who's designated as the chaser or whatever to get them on the calendar, that's honestly half the battle. Like once you have, and another thing that I would say is that we try to keep them as short as we possibly can, like 30 minutes is kind of our standard. Sometimes they're 60, but we try to keep those interviews as short as we can and come as prepared as possible. So for example, if we have 6 months of content prepared and there are 3 or 4 different topics that they could speak to, we try to cover all 4 of those in one 30-minute interview so that we don't have to keep coming back and that we're very respectful of their time. So I would, because they have the least amount of time, be really respectful of what they can offer and try to work with, like, meet them where they're at and have someone assigned to calendar.
Could I add one more thing? All right, so that was a great question, Pete. Thank you. But I think things like we were talking about be consistent and then be more. Sometimes the right thing is like the promotion of that content probably doesn't require the subject matter expertise. So is there a way that I can balance things out so to get the most out of, like, it's really what I'm trying to do. I'm going to take that super valuable content, and now how can I take that and just, get the ROI out of it every which way that I can. And so I think maybe you ratchet things back. Maybe you're only spending 25% of your time generating the content and 75% promoting and finding ways to deploy that content. So.
I think this guy over here had.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, he's been waiting.
So if there's someone out here who doesn't have the internal staff, wants to hire a SEO, a copywriting agency, a marketer for strategy, tell me the top 2 criteria that you would suggest to them in picking the best performing possible agency or partner out there, that they can discern that.
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe we want to go first?
Yeah, we can each speak to our own. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say, and we have a blog post about this too, like how to pick the best content agency or content writer to fit you. And I think we have like 7 different things in there, but I would say the top of my head, generally the 2 problems that we solve for our clients are the time issue, that they don't have enough time to do the writing, but also a stress issue that in the past they've worked with someone else that they couldn't count on for deadlines. Or so I would say to look at what is their track record for being on time, first of all, so that can at least be one thing you're not worrying about, that you're like, I know this is going to be on time. And then the second thing I would say is to ask for writing samples so that you're seeing some variety of different pieces they've done before so you can see their quality. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and depending on what you're looking for, if you already have, say, your SEO strategy and you're looking for, your main concern is you want writing delivered on time, then you're going to obviously ask about that. If you want, say, more SEO strategy and content based on that, you could ask about SEO results, other clients they've worked with. Talk to those clients. Are they happy with them? So kind of the proof is in the pudding sort of idea. Matthew?
Jacob, I got a question for you. You mentioned something about like the keyword, like the balance between keyword and humanism. So like our industry is e-commerce subscriptions, and so like search volume for a lot of our core topics is actually pretty tiny, but it can be really valuable, right? So like, where's the balance between writing what I know because of all the customers we work with and I talk to are interested in reading, but say the search volume's like 20 a month, versus going after stuff that's wider, might have a better search volume? Like, where's the balance between the content strategy?
For something like that, you're honestly just better off going after the long tail, the stuff where you specialize, where you have a better chance of winning. But it's not an either or, because as you build your topical cluster, you can actually have resources about those higher volume topics and maybe expect, set your expectations. You're not expecting to rank for those necessarily. They're there to help round out your domain authority and complete your internal linking structure. But you're really going to start ranking for those long tails a lot sooner.
I've got one for this, and then we probably should wrap it up, but we'll stick around and chat with anybody who wants to stay behind. One of the things I think is important from a strategic level is that there's more reasons to generate content than just SEO. No. Meaning, sometimes you generate content to arm your sales team. Sometimes you generate content to build thought leadership around a person or a topic. Sometimes you build content to support an event. There's a lot of reasons to build content. And so in this case, right, what you're saying is like, the metrics for this particular audience, like I know that there's people who care about this, but they're not showing up if I use this metric.
We're already doing it. That's what's so interesting. We're already doing the thought leadership part and it's working.
Yeah.
But we're not putting that on SEO, which is making me think from sitting here like, well,
Yeah, maybe there's an opportunity.
We should be driving our SEO strategy too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Guys, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for coming. We'd love to hang out and talk with you a little bit later. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.